It's Thursday, November 30th. This is our 2 cents with Chris and Gerry. It's been a couple weeks. I want to start this show off before we do that to just kind of give a shout out. You know, everybody kind of wants to know when we're not on the air, what's going on. Big props to the Atlantic Slam that took place here. Of course, you know, a lot of our crew got used in the NCAA tournament out of here in Moncton, Gerry. So I guess that took a little precedent over our show, although as far as I'm concerned, we are prime time and nothing should ever bump us except maybe the NFL. Overall, Gerry, it's great to see you, brother. You know, we've got a great show lined up tonight. You know, coming fresh, going into December. Christmas is less than a month away. In fact, I took my kids to see Santa Claus at the parade this weekend. You know, it's crazy. It's the time of year. It's cold out. We're finally starting to see a little snow, which means one thing: hockey is in full force, brother. Let's get into this thing. We're going to start with the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, where we always do. But instead of starting in Atlantic Canada, I want to talk about the Baie-Comeau Drakkar, because honestly, they've been the class of the league at this point. They're starting to get a little recognition on the CHL top 10, which is the most nonsensical top 10 list in the history of sports. It's almost like David Letterman wrote it. Overall, you know, what are your thoughts on this thing? Baie-Comeau, how good are they?
Well, do you remember, Chris, it was playoff round last year, and Baie-Comeau, which finished below 500 last year, they finished in 10th spot, and Moncton was in 7th. Guess who met in the first round? The Moncton Wildcats and the Baie-Comeau Drakkar. Do you remember it went to Game 7, Chris? Do you remember, Chris, that it went to 5 overtimes? Well, that same core of players, not only in Moncton, but in Baie-Comeau, seem to still be there or are there. And they've both done a little bit of tweaking, and some of their star players have started to blossom. Let's use that as a term. Let's speak specifically of Justin Poirier, who is Jeremy Poirier's younger brother, who got drafted by Baie-Comeau just one season ago. This is his second season under his belt, Chris, and he's got 23 goals in 28 games. He's a big factor while they're doing so well. And number two is they acquired Justin Gill, Chris, from Sherbrooke last year. And Gill had 44 goals last year for Sherbrooke. Do you remember Justin Gill used to play in Charlottetown? And you never really noticed much about him. And soon he got shipped to Sherbrooke. And it was a big trade, Chris. I can't remember specifically who the ingredients were in it. But as soon as he went to Sherbrooke, he seemed to blossom. And now here he is leading the league in scoring with 44 points in 25 games. Both teams, both Moncton and Baie-Comeau, have been doing it offensively ever since their series from last year, and both of them have been doing it somewhat similar ways in adding your right veteran presence and having your younger players get better.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that Game 7, that 7-game series between Moncton and Baie-Comeau. I went on a rant last year, and it was probably my most viewed rant on the internet. And, you know, it kind of is rolling into one of the topics we're going to talk about, and that is attendance in the New Brunswick markets. I went on a bit of a rant talking about how attendance was down. They had 2,300 people for a Game 7 in Moncton against one of the best. It was one of the best series. And you're right, they came out with a win. That being said, every time Baie-Comeau seems like Baie-Comeau is good. Again, they don't have the media market, we'll say. So I mean, it's the QMJHL, and outside of the Big Four, it's you know, I love Baie-Comeau, and I've got a couple friends who are very large Baie-Comeau fans. And if you think about the news that comes out of Baie-Comeau, go back to your history, if you would. What's the biggest news that you can remember in our era around here about Baie-Comeau? It's got to be the Nathan McKinnon deal. Nathan McKinnon gets drafted first overall. Nate says he won't go there. It's like Baie-Comeau almost seems to always get the short end of the stick. I love it that the thriving things are going really well. And in regards to that trade about Gill, the Islanders got Patrick Gay in 2021 and cost Gill and two first rounders. Thanks. I thought crack staff of stats teams back there. They're just firing these numbers out for us, Gerry. But overall, you know,
I'm telling you,
on the ball. The thing that I really enjoy is that if you go back even a couple of years ago, these teams who are in the making, who aren't the big teams, you know, your Quebecs, your Monktons, your St. John's, your Halifax, you know, Rouyn-Noranda won their Mem Cup, went back with Noah Dobson. Seeing Baie-Comeau get that well, you know, when Rimouski get really good, it's like it's starting to show some parity, and that's great for the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League because let's be real, and I'm not saying that it's not the case because Halifax is a very bona fide star team. It's good that, you know, the Maritimes have dominated the QMJHL over the recent years, and it's good to see some of the parity going back the other way. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Baie-Comeau and Moncton are 1 and 2 when it comes to offense, Chris, and
Mm-hmm.
and looking down through their lineups, and again, we talked about a couple of players in Baie-Comeau, but you have the Loshins and the
Yep.
Desnoyers and such for Moncton. But Moncton has balance, is what they have, Chris. They have 6 guys with at least 20 points. I looked at Baie-Comeau's numbers. They have 5 guys with at least 20 points. So obviously they're spreading around the offense. But Baie-Comeau's averaging almost 4.5 goals, over 4.5 goals a game, and Moncton just under 4.25, and both of them are allowing less than 3 goals a game. So they're getting into tight games. They're not blowing teams out, because both teams could improve defensively and maybe in the goaltending world, because you don't, I guess being around 3 goals against is probably still good in this league. But the fact that they still have the offense and that it's balanced, it's not just coming from a couple of ingredients in your lineup or not coming from one line, is important for both of these teams as they move up the rankings. And Baie-Comeau, with their 23-3-2 record, are finally getting some respect.
Well, one of the interesting things that you brought up too before we started recording, Gerry, that I didn't even realize or take into consideration until you mentioned it, was the Wildcats are second in scoring. And if you look at the man games lost to injury or outside of that with their big guys, you talked about Loshing, you talked about Morin being out. Like, it's interesting to see how many man games the Wildcats scoring stars have been out of the lineup, and they're still second in goal scoring.
Yeah, that's true too, Chris. And I've always said I hope that Loshing doesn't lose 10 games. I thought he might have lost. It was going to lose 10, ended up losing 5 and came back. But, you have to have the right players in the right places at the right times, and injuries is a part of the game. Make no mistake about it. You got to be successful. You got to stay away from that injury bug.
So, as I mentioned earlier, it was on my topic of things to talk about. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was the attendance seems to be low in the New Brunswick markets of the QMJHL. And before I get your opinions and thoughts on it, because I've been racking my brain over this for 2 years or even 3 years now. I mean, how long has the Avenir Center been around? 3-4 years now? No, it was before COVID, so 5 years.
Oh, goodness, that's a good one, Chris. Well, 2020, it was 2020 when the season got shut down. That was their first year there, wasn't it? That 1920 season?
No.
Was that their first year there?
I do not believe.
Remember then when COVID hit and they shut everything down?
I do remember. We were on the air when that happened. How could I forget?
Nonetheless.
Hopefully we'll get crack staff on that. But the reason I'm saying this, and that is, and I've been in part of these conversations, okay, if you look at why attendance numbers are low, I can't speak. September 2018 is when the Avenir Center opened. Is that if you look at, I can't speak for St. John, I can't speak for Bathurst. I can only speak on Moncton because this is where we spend a lot of our time. And that was, ticket pricing is insane. To take your family to the rink, look, I've talked to people around, we've had these conversations regarding their thoughts on the Avenir. And look, don't get me wrong, I love it. I'm glad it's here. It's brought in acts, it's brought in money for the city, it's brought in everything it was set to do. But the fact of the matter is yes, as the Moncton Wildcats being the biggest tenant of that building, the fact that you're trying to sell them off as a premium experience now, and I mean, it's been around for 5 years. People don't care, Gerry. People would still rather go to the Coliseum where the parking lot was full. If you could get into a hockey game for $10, $12, $14, no problem. You look at some of the promotions that the Charlottetown Islanders put out, and if you look at how they do things, they've done a student night where it's like $7 a ticket, or $12 or $15, and that includes your first beer if you're of age. Things like that. Like, those are promotions to get people in the seats. Moncton doesn't do that because Moncton doesn't care. And I know they love their fans, and I know they appreciate them, but you're asking me, what would I do differently? To me, it's a no-brainer. Yes, I love the fact that, Robert's very passionate, and Mr. Irving is very passionate about making sure his fans are there. He loves this team. But overall, to me, it's like he goes to schools. He gives tickets to students to make sure they come on in and check it out. And not enough's being done. This goes back to Game 7, Baie-Comeau last year with less than 3,000 people in a 9,000-seat building for a Game 7 with 5 overtimes. That's ridiculous to me. They've got to figure it out. Anyways, my thoughts on that. I mean, what would you change? What else can they do?
Well, it's all about, no, it is, Chris. Look, it's all about economics. Everybody knows you get in a grocery store lately. I mean, it's hard for a family to get out and see a game, regardless of what the price of the tickets are. I mean, everything has gone up. Everything is more expensive, tickets included. But again, it's because someone's going to hurt. And everybody's hurting the same way, Chris. I would take a look at those numbers, and I'd say at least 10 to 15% is the attendance loss for everybody in the division, everybody in this area, everybody in Atlantic Canada. Even look at Halifax; they averaged 7,800. They were always over 8 to 8,800 fans per game, and even in the big city of Halifax, and even in the big city of Quebec City, I think they're down 10 or 15%. Moncton would usually average, Chris, during the regular season. They'll show your corporate tickets that are being sold, season tickets and such, definitely over 5,000. They're averaging right now 3,900. So you can't tell me it's all about marketing, Chris. It probably is a little bit. You could probably temper it a little bit with a little bit of marketing, but I really think it's all about the economy, Chris. It's not about the quality of play. It's not about the commitment to the teams and putting good quality on the ice. It has to do with the economy. You just have to look out your door and check your bank account every now and then. Yours might be more full than others, but in most cases, it's starting to, there's pinching everywhere you go, and the price of things have gone up.
You got to think, sell cheaper tickets, more concessions. You're right. It's more expensive for every family right now to do anything they want to do. So why would they spend that time? Anyways, I do that. We don't have enough time in the show for me to go on that rant. Let's stick hockey, move to the National Hockey League, because it don't look now. The Edmonton Oilers have won 3 in a row. They're looking good. They're 5 points out of that wild card spot. And again, it seems silly for me to even bring this up with 60 games left on the season. But at the same time, there was a lot of rumors coming out of Edmonton that things were falling off the rails. Have they gotten back on track? Do you think, it was just a minor blip? And it was the right time to have a blip if you were going to have one, I would think.
I know they were up against the defending champs the other night in Vegas, was in Edmonton. And Edmonton blew a late lead, and it wasn't because of good goaltending. It was, again, they gave up 4 goals, and they won in overtime, or won in a shootout, rather, over the Vegas Golden Knights. But I still don't see, Chris, I watched the game, and I still don't see, they were fortunate to win. They're going to be on a long homestand here now, and all of a sudden, those who are going to jump off the wagon will be back on, but then they're going to have to go back on the road again. So I'm not sold yet, Chris. I think they dug themselves way too big a hole, and no matter what they've done in the last 7 to 10 days, I don't think it's going to be enough, even with McDavid and Draisaitl in that lineup, that the rest of the ingredients are going to help them to get into the playoffs. I just don't think it's going to happen. You
don't think Jake Allen's going to be able to backstop them all the way to the postseason? That's right. I said what I said.
Well, again, if you get a goaltender that can get their goals against down, then yes, maybe. But I can't see how they're going to do it.
All right. Next news I want to talk about in the NHL is Patrick Kane has finally found a new landing spot, going to the Detroit Red Wings. He's reuniting with Alex DeBrincat down there. The question I have is, yes, Patrick Kane's what? I think he's late 30s now. I would have to think, if you look at exactly what he's done, is the name alone willing enough to buy tickets, or does he have anything left in the tank? Cool thing that came out of there is former Charlottetown Islander Daniel Sprong gave up number 88 for Patrick Kane. I love seeing stories like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some compensation going the other way. There usually is, maybe a Rolex or something. But overall, I love when they have that stuff. But at the end of the day, number 88 for the Detroit Red Wings joining on down there. What are your thoughts? Can he make an impact down there?
Yeah, Kane is an interesting. When I watched him with the Rangers during the playoffs last year, I think he wasn't in his element. There wasn't anything there that was emotional for him. He didn't seem to be the flair type of Kane you're used to seeing. Now, he's not signing for a whole lot of money. There's not a huge commitment by Detroit. It's only a 1-year contract, and he wants to go have some fun with DeBrincat. Now, they think that that's going to certainly inject him, Kane that is, and also give Detroit a little bit more balance in their top 6. So it'll only be a matter of time. He just did have some surgery. We'll see how he's recovering from that. It's a long way. The contract supposedly is $2.5 million for 1 year and no incentives. So it's really a unique situation for Detroit. And why pick Detroit? Just because of DeBrincat? Kane doesn't need to win any more championships. He's going to go to Detroit and play with DeBrincat, so be it.
I think he's going down there for the $2.5 million, because I think nobody else is willing to pay him that based off of everything they had. You talked about him getting up and wanting to play with DeBrincat. If you couldn't get up and want to play with the New York Rangers last year, then I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm trying to be a glass half full kind of guy, but at the same time, for me, it's like, I would love to see it. I love what Detroit's doing. I love the youth they've got down there. Whenever the Red Wings used to be the dominant force in the National Hockey League, it was good for the league. It was fun. TBD, I guess, is the way I'm going to look at it. Last two things before we move on quickly. What's going on in Columbus, man? I mean, this is, you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets and where they're sitting right now. I mean, is this something you thought? I mean,
Well, again, I didn't have, and I think I remember you saying something about that you think Columbus was going to be good. I thought you had said that, but I still
I
don't
said,
see
don't
the
sleep on them. I
ingredients
said,
there in
don't sleep
Columbus.
on them.
Don't sleep on them. Okay. Well, it seems like everybody's falling asleep there, and nobody's really producing in regards to Line A and Gaudreau, and they don't. There's no appeal there for me. There's no appeal for me to watch them. There's no appeal, especially in their home rink, which seems to be so dark. I just don't like it there. I just don't understand in that marketplace where they get the money to spend on these high-end free agents, and still they don't seem to know what to do around them. They don't know how to blend a team together. So they bore me to death. I don't really. Their uniforms don't appeal to me. The whole thing about the Columbus Blue Jackets bores me to death.
The only thing I really ever liked that came out of the Columbus Blue Jackets organization was Rick Nash. I was always a big Rick Nash guy. Thought he was great, but overall, to me, it was just, man, I agree with you.
But there's some other great young teams.
No, by all means, you're right. You look at the great young teams you were talking about. You got Detroit, Buffalo, New Jersey, the Senators. I mean, you look at everything they're doing right now. I mean, that Senators floor, the Kachuk battle the other night was probably one of the most entertaining games I've ever seen. So you watch these young guys going toe to toe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I see a lot of similarities between New Jersey and Vancouver now. And that the Quins are in the middle of it. You got the Quinn, Hughes rather, Quinn on one side with Pettersson, and then you got Jack playing with Nico Hischier, used to be a Halifax Moosehead, and how quickly he's become a star in the NHL. Not quickly, but certainly how he's risen every year and year after that he's become better and better. So those are two exciting teams. I don't know if you consider Vancouver a young team. I do. I think Pettersson and Hughes are young players that are developing and leading that team just the same way New Jersey is.
I mean, once Hughes was given the captaincy too, the Vancouver Canucks are absolutely in that conversation. I love the youth in the National Hockey League. I like the parity. I like the way it's spread out. All these teams are going to be good in a couple of years. Okay, quickly, let's talk about the NBA in-season tournament. Do you even care about it? Do you even understand how it works, or have you seen a game?
I do understand it. And the only reason I know there's a game is because the floor changes. The whole floor pattern changes on Tuesdays and Friday nights. That's what I understood. They play Tuesdays and Friday nights. They had 6 5-team sets or mini conferences, mini divisions, Chris, of which, the Raptors had Boston and Chicago and Brooklyn and Orlando and didn't play very well against any of them. And so then you break it down into quarterfinals and then finals, and they play for an NBA Cup, and it happens in Vegas. That's about all I know and about all I care, really.
I think you and I are on the same page there. All right. Overall,
I think it's silly. Agree with you. It's very silly.
I do like the floor job, the paint jobs. Let's talk about the NFL quickly. We got to talk about how big of a disappointment the Buffalo Bills have been. I mean, not looking so hot right now.
No, not at all, Chris. And 37-34, even though they fought well against the Eagles the other night, it was just he's trying to think too much, I think, is what Allen's trying to do, and not knowing when to run where he used to run instinctively, and that was a big part of their game. So I don't see Buffalo making the playoffs, Chris, and it's going to be fun to watch. Probably the two best teams in San Francisco and Philadelphia play this week is one of the games to watch for sure in the NFL.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up. I was talking about the game to watch has to be San Fran, Philly. You talked about the Bills and their disappointment. All I'm going to say is, because I haven't had any other place to sneak this in at any point about a passion project of mine, Colts went undefeated in November. I'm just going to throw that out there. They went undefeated.
Yeah.
All right, just letting everybody know.
They're 6-5. Another one of those teams at 6-5, or another one of those teams at 6.
With the easiest second half.
Join the 75% of the NFL that's hovering around 500.
Yeah, a game above 500, and that's all that matters. We got an easy schedule. We got Tennessee coming up this week.
That
I think
doesn't
everything's
mean a
gonna be fine
thing.
with no
Did you see
Jonathan
Chicago
Taylor.
beat? Yeah, Chicago beat Minnesota the other night.
Yeah, I did see that actually. I love that Josh Dobbs story, though. It's too bad it hasn't happened. But overall, if you have Jonathan Taylor, drop and pick up Zach Moss because Jonathan Taylor's out for a couple weeks. Well, Gerry, it's been another great show, but it's time for the Atlantic scene with Green. Hit us with the local news. I need to hear what's going on. I love this part of the show.
The MHL, the Maritime Hockey League, is nearing its halfway point, Chris, and it's tight at the top of the Northern Division. You have Edmundston, along with West Kent and Miramichi battling, 4 points separating third from first. Summerside, which over in the Southern Division, is leading the South Division by 6 points, so they're comfortable there. It's interesting, the schedule maker has these three teams playing each other this weekend, with West Kent having to go to Edmundston, and then West Kent and Miramichi playing a home-and-home series on Sunday or Saturday and Sunday. So things are looking interesting in the MHL, especially in the North Division. In the AUS, well, the song remains the same. The UMB Reds sit on top of the standings with a 16-0 record, Chris. They're followed by St. FX at 10-5-1. UDM's right there, though, at 8-6-2. They're in third place. And again, the schedule maker has it right. Just before the Christmas break, which happens for the AUS right up until January 4th, UNB is at the Antigonish Arena this Friday night at 7 o'clock. Number one plays number two as UNB takes on St. FX. Again, they'll wrap up until January 4th after this weekend's action. The girls have already wrapped up. I'm talking about the UNB ladies with women's hockey. They sit on top at 13-3. St. FX is at 10-2-2. Interestingly, St. Thomas is there in third place, and UDM, the ladies, are in fourth place. They're done until January 4th, so we'll wait and see when they get back from the Christmas break. And also the New Brunswick PEI under 18, they continue to flourish along, and it continues to be the Moncton Flyers and the Charlottetown Knights on top of the standings. And again, Chris, I don't know how the schedule maker does it. Both of them are facing off against each other this Friday night, and it happens in Charlottetown at 7 o'clock. Let's move on, Chris. Our 2 cents is a big part of our show. What is your 2 cents this week?
Every time we get into a show where the title of the show works its way into a segment, I absolutely love it. But yeah, Gerry, my 2 cents, we're going to start off the hop, and that is Thanksgiving's come and gone, which means it is wild, wacky MLB rumor season. It's my favorite time of year when it comes to this route. And of course, every year for the last couple of years, with the Jays not being able to get it done, the rumors have been floating around. Bo Bichette's on the market. We're receiving trade calls, and everyone calls it crazy. Well, here's my 2 cents. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why the Jays aren't so crazy. And truth be told is maybe they should consider trading Bo Bichette. Number one, the infield market is awful. And on second thought, awful might not even be a strong enough word. The best available middle infielder this winter is former White Sox shortstop Tim Anderson, who should probably be playing second base at this point in his career. Is coming off a season where he failed to crack 300 in the batting average, OBP, or slugging percentage. Again, that's the best free agent on the market has to offer. After that, you get down to options like Urshela, and he's coming off a season-ending hip injury. Then you got Ahmed Rosario. The trade market does look a bit rosier, though, with Brewers shortstop Willie Adams and any number of Orioles infielders still available. That being said, Bichette isn't a class all by himself. Look, free agency is just around the corner, and in baseball, the end's always closer than it appears. Like just yesterday, that Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s games, the next big things, but now both are players, find themselves 2 years away from free agency. Toronto hasn't been able to lock either of them up long-term deal, and the closer they get to hitting the market, the less it likely becomes. If you talk to Mark Shapiro, the closer they get to free agency, the more the changes equate, like in the value of the risk of the whole thing. So look, it probably makes them less willing to give up risk if that means it's out there, but the timing of the impacts, look, maybe the Jays will find themselves a sweet spot and Bo Bichette will stick around for the long haul. But either way, I think with a lot that's going on in Toronto, you have to consider it, because my third point is the Jays need a shakeup. Despite a lot of young talent, the Jays haven't been able to get over the hump in the Bichette Guerrero Jr. era. They finished third or fourth up or in 6 of the last 7 seasons. They haven't won a single playoff game since 2016, going 0-6 in 3 postseason appearances over that span. Faces have come and gone. Toronto signed George Springer. They retained Kevin Gossman. They traded for Matt Chapman in recent years. They've even changed managers, but none of it seems to have worked. So look, as much as I love Bo Bichette, and if you're trying to look at how you build your team around this whole option, you have to consider at this point, if the phone rings, look, maybe someone's willing to overpay because the market's so bad up the middle. overall, my verdict is I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just pointing out there my 2 cents. The Jays shouldn't brush this under the rug right away. I think it's something they should take serious. That's my 2 cents, Gerry. Can't wait to hear your topic of choice.
Well, my 2 cents this week, Chris, has to do with the NBA coaches. And if you remember back when the bubble happened and COVID and the coaches decided to go to the games in their pajamas, well, they still seem to want to do that. They still seem to want to wear T-shirts and real casual, light wear to coach an NBA game. And not only do one coach wear it, but they all seem to want to wear the same outfit. Like they all got the same pajama outfit on. I'm getting a little bit tired of it, Chris. They're professional coaches, shirt and tie, jacket at the minimum. Go with no tie, but just get out of the T-shirts and the team wear. You're a coach. You've got to stand out, and the head coach should stand out from the other coaches. Let's compare it to the other leagues, Chris. The NHL, you'd never see it. You always see coat, jacket, tie. It's always the way it was. It's always the way it will be. It used to be the way in the NFL. You'd have the veterans like Tom Landry and Lombardi used to cruise the sidelines wearing their coats and jackets and ties. Well, you're not going to see that much anymore. And weather can dictate what an NFL coach is going to wear, Chris. A ball cap, and let's say your team wear, I would let the NFL coaches get away with that. The other one I'd like to see change, Chris, is Major League Baseball's. Enough with these 40-plus guys or 50-plus guys in age, I mean, wearing a jersey with a number on it and their name on it and wearing the stirrups and walking out to the mound. Look, there must be a better way to dress them up. You remember old Tommy Lasorda when he wore his number 2 and a great big belly he used to have on him? And in all due respect, and rest in peace, Tommy Lasorda, he was a character, but you didn't want to see him in a uniform. You'd want to see him if you can put him in something a little bit more casual. Bottom line, I'm sick and tired of the NBA coaches just cruising the sidelines, wearing their T-shirts and their sweatpants. It's time to put a pair of pants on, wear a belt, put a jacket on, look a little bit more professional. How about dress for the job? That's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you'll join us again next week on Our 2 Cents.